Law firm success strategies will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our virtual receptionist team.
I've been utilizing Answering Legal for my firm since 2015, and truth be told, it was a game changer for me. I can be anywhere, and I'm getting my phones answered by Answering Legal. A strategic partner, as I call Answering Legal, provides a great reward. What is that reward? It's time. Time for whatever I want to do. As a private practitioner, I would highly recommend Answering Legal to other private practitioners. Now, every call goes answered.
Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Law Firm Success Strategies podcast. Our mission is to explore the unique challenges that law firm owners and managing partners face in today's complicated environment, and to offer some solutions about how to run a practice that makes you more money in less time so you can live a life that you really want to live. Today, I'm excited to dive into this topic that is so timely: the role of a virtual assistant in how to scale law firm operations. And joining us is Jen Cochran. She is a seasoned expert in virtual staffing. Jen, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Doug. It's great to be here. Appreciate the chance to be on your show.
Well, I appreciate you being here. We met this past fall at the Clio conference. We had some great conversations, and I spend a lot of time with my private coaching clients on how do I get staffing and what about virtual people? And then I'm like, we got to have Jen on the show because she's got some good stuff to share.
Thank you for including me.
So let's start by talking about how the staffing needs of law firms, especially the small and mid-sized firms, like up to 25 lawyers, has evolved. What's different now, and how can having a virtual assistant help a law firm be more productive and more profitable?
That is an awesome question. And Doug, I've been around for a while, and I think you have too, and probably your listeners and viewers have. And over the last 15 to 20 years, we've seen a huge shift in technology, right? What's possible today was not possible 20 years ago. I'm sure that a lot of your listeners never thought that they wouldn't have to print out a whole case file and print out motions to submit to the court. They never thought that day would come when you could just do it with a click of a button, So a lot has changed in the staffing landscape in that same way, right? 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have the technology to have video calls, to e-file documents with the court, to have virtual court hearings, right? It just wasn't there. And so staffing has changed along those same lines where, you may still have people in the office, but especially for solo attorneys, it just makes sense to maybe have someone that doesn't come into the office that can do the same work that a paralegal would have done in office 10 or 15 years ago.
And, I know that especially those lawyers who've been working for a long time have very much an in-person model where they feel better when the person that that's working for them is in the office. Have you seen people who started off with that mindset begin to embrace the idea of a virtual assistant who's not there?
So, it's interesting because there's always early adapters to technology and different ways of doing things, right? So we work with a lot of attorneys who are kind of early adapters and early adopters of the out of office work style. But we also have clients who were a traditional in-office firm or traditionally wanted their paralegal so that, they could just walk over and ask them something if they needed to, that have adapted to a virtual work style and really like it and are really saving money and time with that.
Yeah, and on the side of those who are the paralegals and the virtual assistants, it's really given them a lot more options, right? You got really quality people who want to work for themselves and work remotely, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting because someone that maybe was a paralegal in California for 10 or 15 years and had a life change, or maybe their husband's in the military, or, so they've got experience in a state that they've moved out of because of, for whatever reason, right? Now they can work in that state again and still use that experience working virtually. So we have I've seen several paralegals that are like that. We have an associate attorney that now works as a paralegal that lives in Georgia, but she's, certified in California, which is so wild that you don't have to stick to your state anymore if you're willing to go virtual with the help that you need. There's a lot of states where the paralegals supply is low, right?
Mm,
There's
yeah.
there's not a lot of bankruptcy paralegals in Wyoming, or family law paralegals in Montana, right?
Hmm.
So it can be really beneficial for a firm to get excellent help that maybe doesn't live in their state but has experience there.
Yeah. And what, just for our listeners, the different levels of experience, right? You mentioned paralegals. There's also probably you have legal assistance and general admin support. Is that if somebody was looking to say, I need help and I want to look outside of my town, or maybe I don't even have a space for them to sit in my office, what kinds of help is available?
Sure. So Equivity has a full suite of services. We have senior paralegals, junior paralegals, legal executive assistants, administrative assistants. We have a pretty full suite of, needs that we can meet in an office.
One of the things that I know many lawyers are concerned about is two of the practical things. One is, confidentiality. Who else are they working for, and how do I make sure my information is compartmentalized? So let's maybe start with that. How does that work if you maybe never even have met the person that's going to support you in person and they're in another state?
That's a great question. So you want to be using a service that has a, non-disclosure contract in place with that paralegal, or have a non-disclosure contract in place with that paralegal. If you're hiring someone off of Upwork, or, any of the other services, you may want to draft a non-disclosure document just to protect yourself and have that contract in place. If you're using a service like Equivity or Woven Legal or Tennessee Paralegals or some of the other great virtual services that are out there, you'll want to make sure that there's something in the terms of use that covers the non-disclosure, that they've got something in place with their contractors or employees that covers that. And then I would go even an extra step and ask for a specific non-disclosure for working with that paralegal.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
what? So if we've got a way to keep things confidential, and it is okay to ask about what kind of systems people use, and data security, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
what about if somebody says they wanted to get started, but they're not sure how to do the work handoffs back and forth? There's this idea of integrating the workflow, and it seems like it's a lot of work because I can't just walk down the hall and and
And
drop
throw it
something
on
on
their
somebody's
desk, right?
desk, right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
does that work?
So there's several different ways that you can integrate a virtual assistant into your workflows. One is to add them to your systems, right? Give them an internal email so you have total control over their access, and add them to whatever case management system you're using, your Dropbox, or whatever they're going to need access to that's under your roof. You don't want to ever be having them store your critical documents that's not under your roof, right? And so that is the ideal way to integrate someone into your workflow, is to literally integrate them into your workflow, right? So that you have complete control over what they have access to, what they can edit, what they see, what they don't see. That is really the best way to do it. Now, some attorneys don't use a case management system. They don't use the cloud except for maybe Dropbox or Google Drive. And there's a lot of email back and forth as to tasks. That's another great way to do it. Some attorneys prefer to use the phone and then just send a document afterwards. You can do that too. Really, whatever works for your firm. If you're outsourcing a virtual assistant, they should be able to meet you where you are.
Yeah, and I've found in my work with lawyers that they'll generally say, I need help. I need somebody. But they won't really know exactly what they need. Um, especially when it comes to, well, let's just call it the soft factors of working. Like I need
Sure.
somebody to do, these particular set of tasks. What do you recommend if somebody's thinking, gee, I need some help, but I'm not quite sure what I want? Should they expect, the company they're calling to help them define what's possible, or do they have to have that done in advance?
It's good to have it done in advance. However, if it's like your first foray into a legal assistant or a virtual assistant, you might want to just start with something small, right? Start with something small that maybe takes 5 hours a month, and delegate that to your virtual assistant so that
Hmm.
you can see if working virtually works for you, if it's a personality fit without a large investment. You know what I mean? Because then as time goes on, so you give them this one task that they've done well through the first month. Maybe now you feel comfortable giving them a second task, or maybe things just kind of inherently roll out so that your virtual assistant is taking on more responsibilities and taking some of the stuff off of your plate. But the service that you work with a virtual assistant, or the person that you work with, if you're doing a 1099 contract type thing, they should be able to be flexible and help you in that way, especially if you're not familiar with how working virtually works, right?
Yeah. So does that mean if a lawyer say has got a big trial coming up and they need somebody to help them, say with trial prep and exhibits and other things, can they go out and find a virtual paralegal or legal assistant just for that kind of project?
Absolutely. So, I can say yes for Equivity for my
Mhm.
company, right?
Yeah.
We have several attorneys that purchase annual plans, and when they have a trial, we have the paralegal that they love to work with that prepares all their trial packets and gets them ready for trial. And then, the next trial that comes around, they've already got their hours and they can just get to work, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, you should be able to find good people, but I would say I would not recommend not knowing who that virtual person's going to be that helps you with your trial prep. And then, a month before trial, relying on them to get all of your documents and packets together if you've never worked with them before, right? You want to have a relationship before you really, really need good work,
Oh
because,
yeah.
you know what
So
I'm saying?
so you
You
want to, you don't want to just be under pressure just trying to find somebody, right?
Yeah, you don't wanna be like, "I needed somebody a month ago and, I gotta get it done, so I'll just take the first person off the street and hopefully they do a good job," right? I would highly recommend that you, work a little bit with a company or with a paralegal, or with an LEA, right, to like, before you get to that crunch time
Sure.
so
Sure.
that
Walk
so that
before
you
you
are
run. Yeah.
Exactly, so that you already have, a good foundation for communication. You know their work style, they know your work style, they know, they know what you need from them, you know what they need from you, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some mistakes that you see lawyers making when they're trying to go out and bring a virtual resource, virtual VA, paralegal, legal assistant, whatever? What are some of the things that some self-inflicted injuries that that the lawyers bring on themselves that they might want to avoid?
So I will say that working virtually, the key to success is communication, right? So if you're an attorney who is super task oriented and has lists and has a great case management system that's like all set up, maybe you're using Clio and you've got automated intake, and then it automatically creates the case matter, and everything's just super easy to jump into and get to work. That is an ideal situation. Having a lot of chaos in your office and not good communication practices, and murky waters as to responsibilities is some of the biggest problems that I've seen with having a virtual assistant. Just because we're not there in the office, we don't have history with the office, we don't know how you like to communicate and what problems you had 3 years ago that might be coming up today. And so it's very different. It's a very different relationship than if you're working in-house. So as orderly as possible is preferred, and that sets everyone up for success.
So, so what if somebody's listening and they heard what you just said and said, "But that's what I need somebody to do for me, to get me organized, because I am all over the place and I don't have any time." Is that something they could expect to get help with, to just help them get
Yes.
organized and put processes in place?
Absolutely. If they're open to help and and it's communicated that, I'm in kind of a mess. I'm a solo attorney. I've been doing everything myself. I don't know how to hand it off. Can you help me put some systems together and some workflows together? Then yes, absolutely. That is something that most virtual assistants and paralegals really like to hear, because we're pretty system oriented.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, because that's one of the things I see all the time in my work is I'm so busy. I don't have time to figure out, never mind finding someone, but how do I'll just do it myself.
Right.
And the problem is that doesn't solve anything for them in the long term.
Exactly,
Um,
and it's not scalable. So, like we love being able to go in and help a law firm set up their intake workflow, right? Or set up their billing workflow, or, set up their case matter workflow, right? Because it's scalable. So the next virtual assistant that helps can do it too, because it's lined out and it's organized and it helps the attorney and it helps everyone that's in office as well as everyone that's working virtually.
okay, cool. So if we go there, right, because that's a good lead in. So if you're working with somebody and they're saying, "Jen, what are some of your tips for, communicating effectively with my virtual assistant? Because I'm just used to somebody being in person where I can shout from my desk or or go out and grab a cup of coffee or whatever. So how do you establish that relationship and that two-way communication with a virtual resource?
Well, that's a great question, and it starts with a kickoff call where you set the foundation for how you're going to communicate, right? So you'll want to talk about your communication style, how you like to send tasks, how you like to receive feedback, what you want to see from your virtual assistant every week. Maybe you want a report from your virtual assistant on Mondays or Fridays to let you know what they worked on last week, what they're working on this week, how many hours they have left, what the ETAs are, what's completed, what's not completed, what they're waiting on from you, right? Setting up that system right out the gate is really the foundation for success. Most virtual assistants will communicate how you like to communicate. So if you like Slack, if you love Slack, that's almost as great as being able to walk down to
Uh-huh.
somebody's
Yep.
office, because
Yep.
it's super quick and easy. It's on your phone, it's on your computer. If you like Slack, if you like texting, if you like email, if you just prefer phone calls, a lot of times if you're a phone person, then your virtual assistant should send you an email with the phone call, whatever you talked about. Great to talk to you just now. These are the case matters that I'm working on. This is the intake that I'm working on, and this should all be done by XYZ, right? Just to keep that communication wide open and crystal clear.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I've found helpful that um, I think the people get that they should have a procedure or a checklist or something. They don't really like writing procedures or checklists, and certainly don't
No,
like
nobody
following.
likes that.
They don't like
And nobody
following
ever reads
procedures or
those
checklists.
either. So,
Right. So how do you go about setting expectations so that you're, if you expect something to be done in a certain way, that you can communicate that, so you've reached agreement on what, not only what has to get done, but kind of, it's really the whole delegation process,
right.
because so many lawyers just, they leave so many gaps. They don't really think about it, and they're too busy to write down all the steps. How, how do you deal with that?
That is a great question, and some attorneys are super comfortable with that, and they'll say it one time, and their virtual assistant is like, "Hey, no problem," and then that's how they work from then on. Sometimes maybe the directions aren't clear enough, and a virtual assistant messes up a couple of times and has to get corrected until they figure it out, right? But what I always recommend for our staff at Equivity is if you're having a conversation and you're talking about how to do things, what's required, what the deadlines will be, how they want it to be done, reiterate that in an email, because putting it in black and white kind of helps to concrete that conversation that you just had. It's kind of like minutes for a meeting. If
Mhm.
you know if you know what I'm saying, maybe it doesn't have to be a fancy Word document standard operating procedure, but it's just double checking that you understood what the client has asked you to do.
Yeah, one of the tools that I've been using, I've used virtual assistants for a couple years now. One of the tools is I'll use an Otter AI. Or I'll record it. Otter.ai is one tool that I use. Gives you a live transcript. I can share it, capture screenshots, or even shoot a Loom video. And
Great.
because the Loom is loom.com, and that way you can just capture your screen, and then you can have your support person take that and translate it into an SOP. This is what I heard you say, or these are the questions. So that's a great way to do, meeting notes. And, so that's one thing. The other thing I'm thinking,
That's a fantastic suggestion, and I mean,
yeah,
Otter AI has changed the game. It has changed the game. It is awesome.
I love it. And I'm able to export, it does great summaries, actually captures audio. This is not brought to you by Otter.ai, by the way. This is just a tool. I love AI tools. Should do an episode on that. And then you can always drop the transcript out into another AI tool and ask questions about it. So that's or even say, this is the conversation, create an SOP for me. One of the things I'm gathering from the conversation is when you go to find your VA, whether it's a paralegal or whatever, you need to be pretty honest about the state of of how you work, how organized you are, and even some of your weaknesses that you're looking for support on, don't you?
Oh yeah, I would say overshare. If you trust the person that you're talking to, for sourcing a virtual assistant, overshare. Let them know everything that's going on. Not only because they're going to try to find an assistant that matches your needs, but also because they may have other solutions for you that fit better than maybe you think that you need a virtual receptionist, but a virtual receptionist and a legal executive assistant together as a team might actually solve the big problem, the bigger picture. You know what I mean? So the more that you share about what you need and where you're at, how you're organized, what systems you use, if you have SOPs already in place, if you just lost two critical staff members who there weren't any SOPs in place and they kind of left you just dropping balls all over the place. You know what I mean? Like it's very different scenarios, and you may need a very different skill set in your virtual assistant to help depending on where you're at. So I would say overshare,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I've found that to be true as well. So there's lots of let's say people have listened to this and said, I got to go find me somebody. And there's lots of ways to go out and try to find virtual assistants, from asking your brother-in-law, if your
Yeah.
niece wants to do something. But if you're looking for, I mean, there are businesses like yours whose mission is to make it easy. So if can you offer some guidance on what a law firm should look at if they were looking at a VA service, and kind of what the different options are?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I would say is you need to look at the integrity of the business or the person that you're talking to, right? As a law firm, your reputation is everything. And so you want to make sure that you use a service that has a great reputation, has a good track record, or a person, right? If you're hiring off of like Upwork or something like that, just a 1099 contractor, maybe that comes through word of mouth, but you also want to make sure to do your own background checks. on that person if you're hiring a contractor. But really, like, integrity and ethics and transparency is everything. So if you're talking to a virtual assistant service and they're leaving questions in your mind and not giving you specific answers to those questions, that would be a red flag for me. Right? If you're asking about terms of use or confidentiality or the background of their virtual assistants, and you're not getting clear answers, that would be a huge red flag. The other thing that you need to look for is experience in the legal area in your area, right? There's a whole different type of experience that comes from, say, being a PI paralegal versus being a family law paralegal versus being a corporate law paralegal, right? So if you're using a service to source your VA or you're sourcing them as a contractor, you want to make sure that they've got experience in your area. And I think, like, paying for a couple hours for them to do a test is great. It tells you right out the bat if they know what they're talking about and if they can create a motion or write a document or there's lots of little kind of tests that you could do. Maybe spend half an hour asking them bankruptcy questions if you're a bankruptcy attorney, right? Questions that they should absolutely know the answer to if they've ever worked in bankruptcy. Just to make sure that they have a solid experience and educational foundation for what you need.
Yeah, and this is a bit of a loaded question, because when I'm talking with my clients, I said, just because you could figure out how to go and hire somebody for the very first time virtually because you're smart and you're a lawyer and you can figure things out, doesn't mean that you should. So
it can take a lot of time. I mean, anybody that's hired anybody knows, like, it's a process.
So what are the primary benefits of working with a company like whose business is sourcing and managing the VA? So what's the return on their investment for that?
Well, generally, the big return is that they already have an HR department in place that is recruiting and interviewing and doing reference checks and doing background checks and, doing skills tests and personality tests before you ever talk to that person. And all you have to do is interview them. And maybe give them maybe purchase a couple hours or do a working interview where they work with you for 6 hours in one day so you can see what it's like to work with them, right? That's all you have to do. You don't have to, post the wanted ad. You don't have to read through 100 resumes. You don't have to call for references and, wait for somebody to call you back and, all of that. That it's very time consuming. And guess what? It's not billable hours.
Well, that's true. So it seems to me that when an agency like this might go source somebody, you're going to tell them all about your firm so that can let me say it this way: can an agency like an Equivity or similar help do values matching too, to make sure you get somebody who has the right level, right work ethic? How does having an agency help with that?
This could get a little touchy, right? But if your legal practice area is in a sensitive area of the law, right, that can be maybe divisive. Some immigration cases are divisive, asylum cases are divisive sometimes, depending on where you're at in the country, right? There's some rights, people that fight for rights can be divisive. So if you're in a sensitive area of the law, you want to make sure that the agency that you're working with knows that right out the bat. And then if you have particulars about the way that you want to work and the soft skills that you feel are required for the job, let them know that, because soft skills are just as important as the actual experience skill set, right? You want to make sure that it's a good personality fit You don't want, if you are kind of an easygoing attorney and you'd like to just hand off tasks and not have to worry about it until you get them back to, and not have to follow up, right? You don't want a virtual assistant that's checking in with you every 20 minutes, like, oh, and what about this? Oh, and what about this? Oh, and what about this? Right? It's not your work style, so that's not going to work at all.
Yeah, so you want to find somebody who can complement you, and if you need to be managed, then you need to be clear about that too, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
I'm curious. I know that there are some models where you pay the company and they do all the, they pay the VA, and so you hire the company and they pay the VA. And there's others where the agency will just refer them to you and then you hire the VA directly. Do you have any sense of what's the better way to do it, or does it make a difference?
So if you know that you need a full-time virtual assistant and you want somebody that's going to be with you for a while, and you know that you actually just want to hire them either as a 1099 contractor or a W-2 employee, I would say use a staffing agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
To help you recruit and find the right person that's going to be a fit for a long time. If you know that the next 6 months are just going to be gangbusters for your law firm, and then and then maybe you have a break over the summer and you just need to take a break, then hiring a full-time employee, a staffing, right, is not going to work for you. You need something that's more flexible. So I would say what's best really depends on your situation, your firm, and how you want to run your practice. It's nice to be able to have some flexibility, right, where you can increase, decrease, or pause for a little bit of time, right, and still have the workforce that you need to support you. But it's also nice if you have a consistent stream of work and you know that you need somebody full time. It's also nice to just have somebody that is yours, that's there for you. So I would say it really depends on the practice.
So in the model that for example, in the Equivity model, that's your company. How does where are you on how that engagement works? Because what I'm thinking is that sometimes people are saying, I don't know if I need 10 hours or 30 hours a week, and
Right.
so are the people that are, how does it work in your model?
So in our model, we have two different models. One is the virtual paralegal, virtual assistant model, where you can increase, decrease, or cancel at any time. It's month to month. It's a monthly recurring billing cycle. So in the middle of that month, if you need to renew early, if you need to pause your plan, if you need to decrease your hours, you can do that, right? If you have a firm that has fluctuating workflows and fluctuating workload, then that would work really well for you. We also have another model where we will recruit for you to have a part-time or a full-time paralegal. Again, you can cancel at any time. You just can't really increase or decrease that easily. You're at 80 hours a month or 160 hours a month. And you don't have to do taxes on them. We do the taxes. So
um, and so when it come to you, they're always getting the same VA, right? It's not going into a pool.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
I know
yes.
that was it's I found great success, and the law firms that I've worked with have found great success once they find the right person. How did you
Yeah,
get
so
into
we've
the?
seen that. We've seen that with our clients. There's some clients that are, they're maybe not super easy to work with, or they have, kind of a fluid type of workflow situation going on, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And maybe the first two VAs don't work out too good, but the third one, it's a perfect absolute match.
Yeah. Here's another question just popped to mind. Um, I know I am a lawyer too. Usually, the time they need help, they'll start reaching out when it's already, the house is on fire, kind of thing. How long does this process typically take from the time you pick up the phone and call a company that can help you to the time that you can actually have somebody showing up in your office?
So it always depends on who we or any other company has on
Sure.
staff, right? So, like right now we've got a lot of immigration paralegals hanging out with lots of availability. So if you're in the middle of some asylum cases and just losing it, give us a call. We can have you somebody tomorrow, right? However, if you are in the corporate law realm, it might take 2 weeks for us to onboard and bring somebody in for you. And
Only a couple weeks. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah, we have a pretty active HR pipeline. So
And so if somebody wants to dip their toe in the water and try a VA for a project, defined period of time, they can do that too, right?
oh, VAs love projects. It's really fun. Yeah. It's always fun to have just like, something different, right? Maybe it's like a 2-week project that they can help with. Yeah.
That's tremendous. How did you get into this business?
Well, it's an interesting story. Right out of college, I went into film and television, and I traveled all over the country, and I was tired of not being home for 3 months at a time, and so then I transitioned into kind of more corporate jobs in marketing, and I just got to the point I was working like 80 hours a week in an executive position and I was burned out and I wanted to actually have a life. And so Equivity was hiring and that was 2017 and I've been here ever since.
Good for you.
Yeah, I love and I love it. I love it. I've never been happier.
So, if somebody who's listening or watching says, "Gee, I'd like to know a little bit more about if this might work for me," how can they get in touch with you?
So you can visit our website because there's a lot of great information on our website. It is equivityva.com. EQUIV as in Victor, ITY, V as in Victor, A.com. Or you can call me at 800-679-5315.
Terrific, and we'll put that in the show notes so that people can get that. Jen, we've covered um, a lot of ground. We could probably do like a week's worth of of uh, of conversations around this. Um, is there anything that you'd want the audience to know about how to go out and make the most of these resources that are out there?
I would say I have seen some of our clients make huge improvements in their billable hours by taking some of the stuff that they were doing and handing it to a virtual assistant, a virtual paralegal, right? Especially with smaller law firms, solo attorneys. I see a lot of solo attorneys they're doing their intake, they're doing, the actual attorney work, they're doing the paralegal work of drafting documents and filing with the courts and calling the courts and all of that, right? There's a lot that you can take off of your plate that are paralegal billable hours so that you can do what you do best, which is think of the strategies to win. And we've seen that with a lot of our clients. If you can just get a few things off of your plate that you don't have to worry about anymore, then you can do what you really do best and what you're educated for, which is to be a great attorney.
So it sounds like they should be not looking at, oh, this VA costs me X dollars an hour, but thinking about, if I have this VA, I can make the difference between what I'm paying and my billable rate, so I can make more money. So it's really an investment in their productivity, right?
Exactly.
Even
Exactly.
if the assistant's hours aren't billable, then you can.
Even if they aren't, which with a lot of practice areas they are,
Mhm.
but even if they aren't billable, you have now the flexibility to take on more billable hours.
I guess the last question I have for now, because otherwise we could go on all day, but what's one thing? Put yourself in the shoes of a VA who's just getting to work with a new lawyer or law firm. What's one thing he or she really would want that lawyer to know?
So I will tell you the biggest challenge for a virtual assistant is all of the different systems, all of the different communication styles, all of the different requirements for each client. Most of our VAs have 5 or 6 clients so that they can work a full-time schedule. I would say just be really clear with your virtual assistant. Give them, a good week or two to get super comfortable in your system, because that is the biggest hurdle to kind of overcome when we start with a new client is how do you like to communicate? What systems do you use? What are your workflows? And really just kind of work with them and be nurturing, and they'll be nurturing back.
So you'd recommend like a regular, like weekly
Oh,
a live
absolutely.
meeting with the VA, not just by Slack or something?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah, I would say, a weekly call when you're first getting started is fantastic. And like as face to face as you can get virtually, a Zoom meeting is great.
What about, and I lied. One more question. Do you recommend trial tasks, and do you recommend if they're doing a trial task that they pay for that VA's time?
Yeah, we do. We do. It depends on the trial task, but like if you want them to review a document or redact a document or create a document, draft a document, right? Those would be billable hours for us. So we would just ask that you pay an hour or two, however long you think it's going to take them to do.
Terrific, terrific. Well,
Yep.
Jen, I so appreciate you making the time to spend some time with us today. I really wanted to have this conversation because I'm a big advocate for lawyers doing things that require a law degree or that require an owner's eye. And that, so we talk about go find who, not how, because there's this delusion, especially with things that are important, that, well, I have to do it myself so I stay in control. Like, yeah, you're in control, but you're not doing it. So,
Right.
so good for you. You're in control, but it's not happening. So reaching out to an expert who can help you find the right person. And if it doesn't work out, find a replacement person, because my experience is the first or second VA isn't going to be you know, your,
Probably not your forever VA. I
not
mean, we try really hard, but probably not.
and there's no saying that the VA is going to want to work with you either. So,
This
so
is true.
it's a two-way street. So, I wouldn't, if you're watching this episode and you're thinking, gee, I got to check into this. Don't just leave it a thought. Take action. Reach out to Jen. Reach out to another company who can guide you through the process. And what I love about using an agency is you get to experiment and learn what you really need and how you work effectively. This is a process that takes time, even if it's a defined task, like helping you for a trial. I love what you said, Jen, that you can't just, I need your help Monday and expect the work to be perfect. It's your learning over time. So if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, just go ahead and drop a note, drop a comment below. Jen, thank you so much for your time. And that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching the Law Firm Success Strategies podcast. I'm Doug Brown, your host. Bye for now.